have to admit, I'm always a little suspicious when an ex-vegan dives headlong into a love affair with meat. I understand that someone who believes they require meat may need to tweak their overall perspective to make it feel ethically okay to eat it. But there is a big difference between choosing to include small amounts of meat in your diet for health reasons versus absolutely reveling in meat consumption. I think that a desire to eat meat coupled with sickness due to nutrient deficiencies could make anyone more susceptible to a message about the alleged dangers of a vegan diet. And because those messages are out there and they are very attractive, I think we're going to continue seeing stories like this. Hey guys, so the whole Nikocado Avocado situation, if you saw my last video or the series of videos that he has done talking about no longer wanting to be vegan, struggling with being vegan, and I responded to the concerns that he had in this video. And unfortunately, he has decided to start eating animal products again. First, I think he was just eating like sardines and eggs. Now he's just eating like everything, hamburgers and whatnot. And so, unsurprisingly, the response from some vegans has been, well, he was never really vegan in the first place. He was just a fake vegan. I know most of you are probably expecting me to like rail on this and say it's just ridiculous. And I will get to that. But first, I do think there is actually some merit to this claim. So Nick has dealings, I guess, with the pet trade, pet industry, in terms of his parrots, in terms of he actually had like a tortoise shipped to him in a box. This is not typically something that vegans would do, that vegans who care about animals and animal ethics, vegans who would consider themselves ethical vegans, this is not really behavior that we would engage in. This would not be vegan behavior given the definition of veganism, to avoid exploitation of animals as far as is possible and practicable. Now, I know Nick has talked about factory farming and has talked about the effect that eating animals and animal products has on animals. I'm not saying that he doesn't care about these things, but from my personal experience, having gone through a very similar journey as Nick's, as far as going raw first and being all about the diet and yada, 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 from my experience, I didn't really care. I didn't really care about animals. I didn't really care about animal suffering when I was a raw vegan, and even for a little while after that. I went raw, I went vegan because I thought it was the healthiest diet ever. I thought it was the best diet for people. I thought we had evolved to eat that way somehow. And that's why I ate it. And sure, I would mention factory farming. I would talk about how it's better, the way I eat is better for the animals and vegan and blah, blah, blah. But I didn't really care. And I didn't really know that much about it, to be honest. It wasn't until I looked into it because, long story short, my mom went vegan for ethical reasons and went vegan pretty much overnight after eating animals. And I was so like, wow, what? What don't I know? This is amazing, because I had always kind of struggled with being vegan. So I actually started looking into factory farming and just the inherent nature of how animals are raised for food. And that's when I became an ethical vegan, basically. Maybe I'll do a separate video talking at length about my kind of journey to veganism, to raw food, and then through the high carb cooked, and then where I am now. That might be interesting. I'm not saying that this is exactly how Nick feels, but I wouldn't be surprised given my own experience and dealing, so to speak, that I've had with raw foodists, most of them former raw foodists now, years ago. It doesn't seem that uncommon for people who are really big, especially raw food, but also to some extent the high carb, low fat vegan movement as well, for them to be really more focused on the dietary aspect of veganism and not so much the ethical side. And to just pay lip service to the ethical side as like a way to promote the diet to others. However, please do not say that Nick is a fake vegan or was a fake vegan or not a real vegan or whatever. It's really not helpful. Number one, even if it were true, it just looks like a no true Scotsman. It just looks like you were avoiding all of the struggles or any of the claims that he is making, and you're doing that by just being fallacious, by just saying, oh, well, you're not really one of us. And speaking of one of us, it looks really culty, and it kind of is. It's very cultish, like this is what cults do. When people leave Scientology or what's the one I just learned about? Quiverful. When people leave a cult, this is what the cult members do. They say, oh, well, they were never really one of us. It's not helpful. Instead, we should, look at Nick's mistakes and try to learn from them, for ourselves so we can prevent the same, burnout for ourselves, but also for others. So if other people are having these struggles, we know how to help them, to provide support if they want it. So it's disappointing. I made my video, Nick saw it, he responded in the comments and with a few more concerns, which I responded to, and then he said thank you. He didn't have any counter arguments, so it seemed like he understood, and yet, he's making a lot of the same arguments still, and the arguments that he tackles in his recent video are like the silly ones, not really the arguments that myself and other more educated vegans are making. So yeah, that's pretty frustrating. Or, I don't know, if you want a really good example of like how not to respond to vegan concerns, you can check out Brianna Jackfruitson's video. It's pretty awful, if I'm being honest. It's probably the nicest way I could put that, I guess. I don't know, if you guys want me to respond to that, I will, so just let me know in the comments. But yeah, in his recent video, he's talking about he tried vegan, he did raw, he did starch solution, he did whole food plant-based. That's not, it's really frustrating. Yes, raw is unhealthy. Raw is not a healthy diet, period. Starch solution is not a healthy diet, period. You are limiting nuts and seeds and beans even for what? For no reason whatsoever. And then whole food plant-based, as I've said before, this is not necessarily adequate. You can eat a varied, really beautiful, healthy looking whole food plant-based diet, but if those foods are not providing enough iron, enough calcium, enough whatever, that's not a healthy diet. And for Nick to start eating eggs as if that's going to help with his situation, it seems like he's not taking this very seriously. I mean, Nick, do you think you're low in cholesterol? You were concerned about B12. Eggs aren't a good source of B12. You were concerned about DHA. Eggs aren't a good source of DHA either. In my mind, if you were serious about this, if you were looking for a source of these that wasn't supplements for whatever reason, wouldn't you go to oysters? Oysters are a good source of B12, a good source of DHA, along with other nutrients as well. And plus, they aren't sentient, so you don't have to worry about the pain and suffering that your choice is causing, because they can't feel any of that. And plus, they're actually good for the environment as well. It seems that you are more interested in pseudoscience and anecdotes from the opposite extreme. You're kind of going from one extreme to another. I think, like me and like everyone else interested in raw, we did it because of the anecdotes, because look how slim Freely got or whatever else. And now you're really doing the same thing. You're doing what all of these ex-vegans, most of them claim, they eat one egg and then they instantly feel better. That's ridiculous. That's pure placebo. There's no way that you can eat one egg or one bite of fish and instantly feel better. When Lear Keith decides to eat her first bite of tuna fish after 20 years as a vegan, she says, "I don't know how to describe what happened next. I could feel every cell in my body, literally every cell, pulsing, and finally being fed. Oh God, I thought, this is what it feels like to be alive." This, more than anything, shows that Keith's conviction about her need for meat has to do with something other than nutrition, because food just does not work like that. Eating a bite of tuna, no matter how deficient you might be in a nutrient that it supplies, does not cause all of your body cells to start pulsing. It wouldn't cause you to feel too much of anything. At the very least, you'd have to digest and absorb it first. I know when I have been iron deficient, it takes weeks. It takes about 2 weeks for me to really start feeling better. Of heavy supplementation, that's like 3, tablets, lots of iron every single day supplementing. And it takes about 2 weeks for me to even notice a difference. And speaking of iron deficiency, if you're really into this intuitive eating now, why don't you try ice for an iron deficiency? When I am iron deficient, That's what I crave. I don't crave lentils. I don't crave red meat. I don't crave iron supplements. I crave ice. I crave something completely devoid, there may be a little bit, almost completely devoid of iron. That's what my body is telling me that I need when I have an iron deficiency. If I listen to my body, I'd be in pretty bad shape right now. Nick, you asked for help, and that's the main reason I made that first video. I know some vegans were fucking turds in how they responded to you, and that sucks. That sucks. But a lot of us weren't. A lot of us just answered your concerns and really tried to be as helpful as possible. And you obviously saw those concerns and you just ignored us, and you continue to make the same claims without countering what we said, without implying that we were wrong. You're just making the same claims, implying that veganism is unhealthy, implying that you know this because you followed all the experts and you didn't get healthy when you didn't follow the experts. You essentially followed the winners of a popularity contest. You followed Freely and Durian Rider and McDougall. It would be one thing if you were just you, but you have a growing following of clearly a lot of non-vegans, given a lot of the comments on your recent video. And this is exactly the thing that people are looking for. It's one thing for someone who's never been vegan to say, oh, vegan's bad. It's a whole nother ball game when a former vegan, when someone who is vegan for a long time says, hey, I did it and it doesn't work. That's really damning. It shouldn't be. It should just be viewed as an anecdote in a sea of anecdotes, but it's not, unfortunately. People find what you were saying more credible than they do what registered dietitians are saying, what an entire body of experts is saying. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the British Dietetic Association, the Canadian Dietetic Association, I believe it's called. People don't care that they're saying, yeah, vegan is fine. They care what you're saying. I don't want you to not share your experience. I don't want you to shut up and just not be honest and to not share this with people, as I said in the first response to you. But I don't feel that's what you're doing. Whatever your reasons, be intellectually honest. Be honest that the vegan diets that you followed are fringe vegan diets, and they are not what is considered a well-planned, appropriate vegan diet. That's not a bajillion calories and not full of fruit or full of potatoes and just all whole foods, no supplements. That is not an appropriate planned vegan diet. I'm talking about a 2,000-ish calorie diet with an adequate amount of protein, enough DHA, enough calcium, etc. You could even go the Eco-Atkins route if you wanted to. I know you mentioned the protein thing and feeling better on more protein. Again, it's probably a placebo at this point, but there's nothing wrong with getting more protein. I love eating a higher protein diet. So if you wanted to, you could totally go the Eco-Atkins route and get tons of protein, or again, introduce oysters into your diet. If you can get sardines down into your body, I don't even understand that, but if you can do that, I'm pretty sure you can handle oysters. My concern really is not with you eating eggs or sardines or whatever else. My concern, again, is with spreading this idea that vegan is unhealthy, that it can't be done, and look, you did it and it didn't work. Spreading this to a growing following. That's very concerning to me. And then also, I have concern for you. You are essentially self-medicating. You might really have something wrong. You might really need to see a doctor and get this checked out. And instead, you're self-medicating. You're just saying, well, eggs are going to fix it. What if it really is a DHA issue and you're eating eggs to fix it? And again, implying to other people that just eat some animal products and that's the healthiest way to eat. Again, when I talk about vegan needing supplements, it's not just a vegan diet. It's hard to eat any diet and really meet all of your nutrient needs. It really is, unless you are eating specific foods. Look, if you are eating an omnivore diet, and you aren't supplementing and you aren't eating fatty fish like salmon, you're not going to get enough DHA. If you are eating an omnivore diet and you're eating a good amount of fruits and vegetables and stuff, but you aren't eating dark leafy greens, you aren't drinking milk, it's probably going to be hard for you to get enough calcium. I guess the final thing I'll say is that Nick's whole experience here, it's really a good, unfortunate example of what I've talked about before as far as why I think these diets and promoting these diets, the raw vegan and the high carb vegan, the fully raw, whatever else, why these are so damaging. Now, I'm not saying that an ethical vegan who eats just a normal healthy diet can't stop being vegan. Of course that can happen. I'm sure it does happen. And I'm not saying that Freely and Durian Rider and High Carb Hannah and McDougal, whoever else, I'm not saying that they are responsible for Nick not being vegan anymore. But to say that they don't play a role, to say that these kind of people who are promoting these unsustainable, unhealthy diets don't play a role when vegans like Nick experience burnout, it's not surprising to me that Nick is no longer vegan. And I am sympathetic, and I do understand. You know, it's hard when you are, even for someone who really, really cares about the animals and they are in it for the animals, if you feel like shit, if you are trying to do this diet and you're trying one vegan diet, you're trying raw and you're trying high carb and you're trying, you know, a little bit more high fat, you know, high carb, or you're trying the mostly raw or whatever else, and you keep trying new things, it's unsurprising that at some point your feelings of burnout are going to outweigh your care for animals. I think most of us are like that. Most of us are not saints. We can't go through feeling like shit and then also making the effort to keep trying another vegan diet to help the animals. It's very difficult. This is why I'm always harping on these shit diets, because they absolutely play a role, and the people promoting these absolutely play a role when yet another vegan who has tried all of these diets just say, well, I've tried veganism and I'm done. When Ryan responded to me, I think it was the protein video that I did, and I quoted Jenny Messina and Jack Norris, registered dietitians. In that video, he mentioned it and was like, I don't know who are these people? I don't know who these people are. It's just so frustrating to me that it's very likely, you know, more vegans know Freely and Durian Rider's name than they do Jenny Messina and Jack Norris, actual dietitians, people who really know what they're talking about and who are providing good nutrition advice. It just sucks. And I think for those who are saying, well, just eat high carb, just do whatever you want, please remember this. You know, again, Nick is responsible for his own choices, but to say that these diets didn't play a role in his burnout, I think is pretty ridiculous. So that's it. Nick, everyone else, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it. I'm sorry I ended on kind of a down note, but I mean, look, I think the good thing I'll say is that I think more people are becoming aware of the kind of sham of low-fat, high-carb diets and how unnecessary they are, and nuts and seeds and avocados are totally healthy, and supplements are like really okay. And like you can eat mock meats and still be healthy. And, you know, if you don't want to eat optimally on a vegan diet, like that's okay. You know, there's a difference between optimal and adequate. Maybe that's a video I'll do talking about that, because I don't think people really understand the difference. Yeah, I think I'll do a video on that. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave them down below. And if you want to subscribe, and I will have a new video very soon. Hey guys, so Nikocado